Alright guys, it's that time of the year again where I count down my top 10 best movies of the year, my top 10 worst movies of the year. Last year I only did a top 5 worst movies of the year, but this year I unfortunately saw 10 bad movies worth bringing up again at the end of the year. So yeah, I did see a few more bad movies this year. I saw 57 movies in total this year. Luckily most of them were good, but we do have these 10 to talk about. And a few disclaimers before we get started. These are my picks for worst movies of the year. You might not agree with some of these picks, so feel free to comment below, oh, I don't agree with this pick, and be sure to comment your own, but don't dislike the video, these are my thoughts. You're not going to agree with all of them. Also, I didn't see every bad movie to come out this year. I heard 50 Shades of Grey was pretty awful. I missed it. Sorry. I heard Sinister 2 was pretty bad. Sorry, I missed it. Or, I mean, I guess that's better for me because I didn't have to sit through another bad movie this year. But that being said, I did sit through 10 bad movies this year, so let's get started with those. Starting with number 10, and a couple spots could have filled number 10, but I gave it to In the Heart of the Sea. In the Heart of the Sea was the biggest snore fest of 2015. It was one of these movies where I got through, but I was bored the entire time. Boring Thor was in the movie, boring Spider-Man was in the movie, boring whales were in the movie. It was a movie that I didn't get anything out of. I was hoping it would be an Oscar contender. I couldn't have been any further from the truth. This movie did back Fant Four Stick, Insurgent, and Terminator Genisys out of the 10 spot though, so congratulations In the Heart of the Sea for being even more boring than any of those movies, and you get the top 10 spot. Moving on, we're going on to number 9 next, which is Alvin and the Chipmunks, The Road Chip. A movie I saw less than a week ago, but I still hate it. This movie, it had cartoon chipmunks singing pop songs and cartoon humans enabling them. No, the humans in the movie weren't actual cartoons. They were just cartoony people who were in this movie for some reason acting like cartoons. This movie flowed awfully. It's probably written by like an illiterate llama on the back of a napkin in purple crayon or something like that. Ultimately, this movie had no idea where it wanted to go. There weren't even that many musical numbers in the movie, and the gimmick of these movies is to have musical numbers, and there weren't any. So this movie failed in that regard too. It's not the worst Alvin and the Chipmunks movie to ever come out, but it is one of the worst movies of this year to come out. Not as bad though as 8 others on this list. So moving on to number 8, this is definitely a controversial pick, and before you hit that dislike button, I'll tell you why Jurassic World is my 8th worst movie of the year. For me, I can understand people saying, oh, you know, I enjoyed Jurassic World. It was like a fun turn your brain off kind of popcorn flick. But for me, none of the characters really worked. I didn't think Bryce Dallas Howard or Chris Pratt were really developed. I don't even remember their character names from the movie. I thought the whole thing was kind of an advertisement for Verizon Wireless and Mercedes-Benz. The dinosaur action was kind of cool, but ultimately, this movie didn't have anything that made me remember it, and more failed in the movie than I thought worked. So, again, if you enjoy this movie, great. If you can turn your brain off and enjoy it, that's great. But for me, if I need to turn my brain off to enjoy this movie, I would need to turn it so far off I'd be in like a coma or something. Moving on, at number 7, we have Ted 2. Ted 2 was a movie where none of the humor worked. It felt like a bunch of Family Guy sketches that were just kind of sewn together by Seth MacFarlane. But not even good Family Guy sketches, it's just like the rejected ones that Fox Broadcasting wouldn't let him air. So he just took all of those, acted them out with Mark Wahlberg and a teddy bear, and then he put them all together in one mess of a movie. This movie was all over the place. It was a movie I didn't enjoy. It was a movie I barely laughed at. Cameos weren't even that great, and it's a movie I just didn't enjoy overall. And I loved the first Ted, so this was a big downgrade. At number 6, we have The Boy Next Door. Our first unthrilling thriller on this list. The Boy Next Door is a movie starring Jennifer Lopez that came out all the way at the beginning of this year, and it's a movie that was just unsuspenseful, and it tried to build the suspense, it tried to build the tension, it tried to be like Gone Girl, but it wasn't. It was terrible. This movie cast Jennifer Lopez, and she just didn't know how to act, and then it cast a dude who got killed by an anvil at the end of the movie in one of the most cartoony live-action deaths I've seen in a movie. It's a movie that didn't work in any degree. The writing was cheesy, the directing just was way off, and the acting was completely phoned in, if existent at all. Moving on to number 5, our next unthrilling thriller on this movie is Dark Places. Dark Places is a movie I'd read the source material for, and I was so psyched that it was becoming a movie. This movie had Charlize Theron, it had Nicholas Hoult, it had a bunch of great actors, but it was terrible. This movie was a drag. I figured if you're taking the source material and you're adapting it, you can make it great because the characters were so great in the book, but this director had no idea how to direct the actors in the movie. It just became boring. And I was sitting there, I'm like, none of these characters I care about. In fact, the characters in the movie were supposed to be likable. They actually became unlikable. I hated all of them in the movie. I didn't care if any of them died. I didn't care if any of them lived. It was supposed to be a movie where you're supposed to care about these characters even though they aren't the best people in the world. But ultimately, at the end of this movie, I just thought, well, that was a waste, and it was way too long. In fact, can we just rename it? Can we call it Dumb Places? That sounds better. Then, speaking of dumb and speaking of unthrilling thrillers, at number 4 we have The Loft. The Loft is one of these movies that I went into thinking it could be kind of cool, it could be like a really intellectual whodunit type of movie, but the characters aren't built up from the beginning, so you've got person A, person B, person C, and person D, and you're like, oh, one of them did it. But they're all like the exact same person, so I don't care which one did it because they're all the same person. And then the movie awkwardly trots along for about an hour and a half, and you're watching this and you're like, wow, wait, this movie just got dumb. It's getting dumber. It's getting dumber. These twists are getting stupider and stupider and stupider and stupider, and these characters are making no sense, and oh my god, I'm bored. Speaking of boring, we have Jupiter Ascending at number 3. Jupiter Ascending was the most convoluted, most dumb sci-fi movie I've seen in a really long time. The visuals weren't impressive in this movie. The acting was phoned in. The actors in this movie were impressive talents. You had Mila Kunis, you had Channing Tatum in this movie. They could have been great, but they weren't. It was just an awful script. It was like garbage piled on top of garbage piled on top of garbage, and none of it made sense. It's like, oh, this clan was fighting against this clan or something. I had no idea. This was a movie I saw it was the 3rd movie I saw this entire year, and I thought, yeah, that's probably going to be on the list. And the more I thought about it throughout the year, the less sense it made. So the higher up on this list it got. Pixels, number 2. Pixels is one of these movies that tried to sell you completely based on nostalgia. It was trying to be a comedy, and none of it was funny. Kevin James was the president in this movie. Me telling you that was more funny than it was in the actual movie. Adam Sandler had this creepy romance. Peter Dinklage was a completely creepy womanizer. Josh Gad was like a 4-year-old in a 30-year-old man's body. None of the humor worked at all in this movie, and it was supposed to be a comedy. The action scenes were filmed okayly, but when the movie is trying to be a comedy and not an action movie, and it completely fails at being a comedy, and you just hate watching these comedic lines be said, it's gonna get to number 2 on the list. But at least I enjoyed it more than number 1. At number 1, the worst movie of 2015, we have Maze Runner: The Scorched Trials. Maze Runner: The Scorched Trials is one of these movies where I walked into it saying, okay, I mean, this could be cool. This movie takes all of the other bad parts about the movies of 2015 and just amplifies them up. Because not only do you not know who any of the characters are, you don't care who any of the characters are. You can, like, start killing kids like it's the Hunger Games, and you'd be like, yeah, this movie's getting better. Every single scene, I swear to God, is less than a minute long in its entirety. There's no scene longer than 60 seconds. The dramatic writing is comedic in this movie. I swear to God, that scene where Gus from Breaking Bad is trying to make a stealthy escape from the burning building, and he gets on the zipline and he says, "Follow me!" That's just like the tip of the iceberg right there. That's not even the worst comedic scene in the movie. I promise you, at the end of this movie, when they show up to, like, the Rogue facility, I was waiting for Triss and 4 from Divergent to show up and just get ready for the crossover. To be like, hey, we're from Divergent, ready for the crossover? Because that's what the writers would probably do, is like a Hail Mary to save this franchise. I think that the writers were trying to make this some kind of Empire Strikes Back of the Maze Runner series, but you didn't care about any characters. The directing was absolutely atrocious. No scene was longer than 60 seconds. No, you didn't care about anything going on in this movie. The dramatic scenes became hilarious. The scenes that were supposed to be funny weren't. You cared about nothing in this movie. This movie was overly long, and it was absolutely atrocious. At least this is a movie that you don't hate watch, like Transformers 4 was my worst movie of last year. This movie you can at least watch and kind of pick apart with your friends and say, man, this movie is so hilariously awful. That doesn't change the fact that it's actually the worst movie I've seen all year. So guys, those are my picks for top 10 worst movies of 2015. Be sure to leave yours in the comments down below. I know I did have like a couple controversial picks in this list. You can go to mymoviethoughts.com/2015 movies, and you can see reviews for all these movies and all the other movies that I saw in 2015. As I said, I saw 57 new released movies this year. Or you can follow me on Twitter at John M. Haig. All links in the description to those. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching.